Hello, and welcome to day 3 of the NNP Symposium. This is the last day, so thank you all for sticking with us through the weekend if you've been tuning into presentations along the way. This hour, we will have Ben Dalgleish talking about the tragedy of the SS Japan and the 1874 CC over S trade dollars. So Ben, you can go ahead and unmute and turn on your camera whenever you would like. And Ben is coming to us all the way from Hong Kong. So I believe he is our most international presenter this year. We've had a couple from other countries, but I think Hong Kong is the furthest. So with that, I will turn it over to Ben. We will be doing a Q&A at the end. You can send questions in at any time, but we'll be reading those off at the end of the presentations. So take it away.
Hello all, this is Ben Dalgleish. Thank you for joining me tonight, this morning, wherever you are in the world. The purpose of this presentation today is to share the history of the SS Japan and its cargo, the coins that it carried, and the possible chance discovery. Just a disclaimer, I didn't personally dive for these. The story of how these coins were found will be shared later, but I've worked hard to try and attribute them as best as I can. But due to the circumstances, they can never 100% be from the ship. But after the presentation, I hope you'll see the steps I've taken, the facts I've considered and encountered, and then it's up to you to come to whatever conclusions you want. So with that in mind, let's get started. So introduction about myself. This is my Instagram, and as Liana mentioned, I live in Hong Kong. I'm a coin collector. I've been doing it for about a decade or so now, and my focus is on Japanese Edo era samurai coins, which will be on later today, introduced by Liana herself, so make sure you tune into that. We also have a focus on trade dollars, trade between the East and West, chop marks on silver dollars. So if you want to see more of what I find, this is where you can get in touch with me and see what I come across over in the city. A little bit of context to collecting in Asia, for those of you who might not know. Hong Kong has a very long and storied history with numismatics. There have been hundreds of shops in the city. Used to be a British colony, and it acted as a sort of gateway for antiquities to come out of China into the rest of the world, and still does so to some degree. There were many shops here, about 200 shops at its peak in the 1990s. And all the dragon dollars and all the expensive auction results you're seeing are a result of all the shops that used to be open in Hong Kong, and all the trade that used to flow in and out of the gateway into China, as the city is called, to such an extent that PCGS, NGC, Stack's Bowers, Heritage, they all have a presence here. They all have main offices. I can walk into PCGS as easily as someone in California can and submit my coins over a counter. This is an example of what some of the shops look like. It's a shadow of its former self. A lot of the coin collectors and dealers that kind of populated the city have moved on or passed away or retired. So I'd say there's only about 40 or so shops in the city left out of 200 or so, but the hobby is still strongly present, and we still have regular coin shows when things are a little less crazy. So this is the inside of the mall. Everything's shut right now because I went in the early morning, so they just started, but you can see every shop is an individual coin or a numismatic or a notafilia shop in there. Some do stamps as well. This is just one hallway. That building I showed you earlier was 4 stories. And this is just some of the things that we see inside. So everything from silver dollars to silver trinkets, Japanese, koban there, and graded items like from PMG and PCGS as well. So just to give you an example of the things that I encounter while I'm out here every day. And it's a little bit of context for what I'm going to discuss in a minute. So these are just some of the things I found while I've been in the city. Everything from Qing Dynasty silverware to rare hosts of chop marks, unique bullion. Some interesting pieces include the sea salvaged 8 reales that I believe was pulled off the beach somewhere and you can see it's absolutely covered in shot marks, and then it's been dropped in the ocean. So quite a cool piece. This was also something that was an artifact that was pulled out of the Yangtze River in China in the beginning of the millennium, and it appeared on IG. I found it through an American dealer, and I showed it to my local friends. And one of my local friends confessed to me that he was the one who actually found the coin in the river. He actually went to the Yangtze River and dug these up and submitted them, and they ended up in the American market. So that was quite funny. So just a demonstration that the things that I can find in Hong Kong, there's still a lot of unique items out here, a lot of interesting numismatic opportunities in history. I just wanted to demonstrate that. For the past 4 years or so, Hong Kong's been going through quite a hard time with the pandemic and the troubles. So being a full-time teacher, I've ended up having a lot of free time. And so out of boredom, I started to go to the coin shops that I usually frequented and taking photos and uploading it to IG as a way of sharing some interesting finds and just just getting to show people what the hobby is like over here. And when I started to do that, people started to reach out to me and ask for me to help them find things. And my hobby kind of grew from there to the point where someone will ask me to find a chop marked 1876 Philadelphia trade dollar, and I'll go out and I'll find it a few months later. Or we've got a Russian ruble here with chop marks. I think there were 2 to 5 known in museums, and I managed to find one in a back alley in Hong Kong. So that was a lot of fun. So what this ends up doing is I've ended up building a lot of relationships with the dealers in Hong Kong. They've come to know me and my unique tastes and the things that people ask of me, and they end up going into the back rooms or into their storage areas, into their personal collections, pulling out things that no one else in Hong Kong might be interested in, but I might be, because of the things that I've bought from them before. And so that kind of gives into context of how this whole thing started. And I would say this isn't really so much as any sort of what's the word? I've lost the word now. This is kind of a story sharing of these past 6 months, what I've gone through, and maybe there's something you can take away from this, and something we can share. I'm kind of sharing my thoughts and the process that I went through over the past few months regarding the shipwreck and its treasure. So onto the present topic, which are these things. These are the trade dollars that I came across one day on one of my sojourns into the city. One of the dealers brought these out for me, knowing that I would like silver trade dollars. And my initial reaction was one of surprise. The condition was terrible, to say the least, quite odd. Damage varied from coin to coin, but the dealer told me that they were trade dollars that he'd bought in Fujian in 2007, but had not been able to attribute them to any shipwreck or any sort of area, just that he went to a shop and bought them from a friend or from a coin dealer, and that they were obviously sea salvaged, but beyond that, he couldn't tell me anything about them. And because of that, and the condition they were in, the price was quite cheap. He was willing to offer me quite low. So of course, my alarm bell started ringing. This sounds very suspicious, but I bought some things from him before and they turned out fine. So I was curious as to what was going on. So I decided to have a look, and the dealer had been unable to sell them because of the poor condition, but he picked them up, I guess, because they were a deal at the time, and he put them into storage and forgotten about them. Remember, he bought them in 2007, and now it's 2021, November 2021 when this occurred. But he dug them up for me, and I guess he was clearing out one of his many shops, and presented them to me because he knew about my interest in this kind of thing. My initial reaction was I could see there were CC mint marks on a lot of them. So you can see some of that was here, and all the visible dates where it was visible was 1874. This wasn't visible on every dollar. As you can see, some of them were completely obliterated. The same can be said for some of the details and some of the mint marks as well. Okay, so this was the variety of the damage I was seeing up close on a high definition. I put this in the scanner to share with you. So you can see there's a significant amount of damage on some of the dollars here, but the overall pattern is there that you can make out that it's supposed to be a United States trade dollar. But some of them look like this. And you can see if I was to present this to any coin collector and not give any context, I think they would be challenged to even identify that it was a trade dollar in the first place. But when put side by side, you can just barely make up the symbol of the eagle there, and some strange colors and some strange burn marks, some strange darkness all over the coins. It was all very weird. Well, not entirely sure what was going on. But zooming in, you could see the CC mint mark was there on a majority of them. I would say about 60%. So one of the things that I bring along with me on all my travels around Hong Kong is Sigma Metalytics precious metal verifier. So I ran every coin over this device and found out that they were all turning up as 90% silver from pre-1900s United States. Now, just in case people aren't familiar with what this device is, a precious metal verifier is a portable device. It's slightly larger than an iPad, much thicker, and it goes in a nice little case. Allows me to test the resistivity of metal. So some metals are better at conducting electricity than others. And this device is calibrated so that it can test the resistivity of precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, and also copper and other devices you can set for different types of coins, different time periods, or you can just do a basic measurement mode where it just gives the output. And it does not show the composition of the coin. It just merely allows you to test the coin based on what you think the composition will be, and it gives the readout accordingly. The most important thing to keep in mind here is that this device is not common in Asia. So it's an American-made device. It's all operated in English. So whenever I bring it out, the dealers are often confused, shocked, and surprised by it. And once I start demonstrating what it can do, they start bringing out other items they don't know about, asking me to test it, and I find fake bullion and everything all the time. So I would say that in terms of potential counterfeiters and forgers, this device helps provide a modicum of protection and helps me get through one layer of authenticity faster than normal. So just to give an example of how to read it, this is a fake trade dollar that I acquired. Just to clarify, this wasn't part of the hoard that I found in any shape or form. It's just one that I happened to have. And running it over the machine, this black bar represents the current reading of the device. And if it falls within this white bar, then it's within range and within acceptable parameters to be this metal. It's highly likely. But you can see it's falling well outside it's just outside the range. This is a silver plated fake dollar. And at the same time, when I use a different setting called measurement mode that just gives the resistivity rating, it's too high. It should be between 1.1 and 3, and this is just outside at 3.77. So just to give a device of what I should be seeing if these are fake. But if we go back just a couple of slides, you can see that the dollars were coming off as 90% silver. So that was a good sign. So these are either very good fakes or there was something else going on. Remember, at the time, I had no idea what wreck or where these came from. We just knew they were dirty dollars and they seemed to be silver. So this is just some more examples of what I was seeing up close. So this photo was taken by a friend, Chopmark Coins. You can find on IG and use the permission from another account. This is a pancake, who's the current owner of the coin. So just thank you to both of them for letting me use that. So one thing I wanted to point out is to note the variety of the damage I'm seeing on the coins. So this is one specific example, and the damage isn't too great. You can see the mottling on the coin, as well as these strange black marks all around. I couldn't figure out what that was. I assume maybe it was mud residue, but at the time I wasn't entirely sure, and it seemed quite strange. Why wasn't it covering the entire coin? Some of them were as black as coffee, and some of them were as shiny as the silver, as if it comes straight out of the mint. So it was all very strange. And then here's another one. Same photographer, different coin. So again, thank you to Dan for helping me take a picture of the photo. You can see that some of the dark patina I was talking about, and this one here, the glowing color and the scrape mark suggests that this had been cleaned, as if someone was trying to get the whatever this black residue was off and failed and gave up halfway. In fact, some of the coins had excessive cleaning marks, but not all of them. So that gives the impression that someone had had a go at them, had tried to clean them up for whatever reason to reveal what they were because the condition was so poor, or possibly to try and improve the condition and try and make them easier to sell, but gave up halfway. But there were signs of cleaning on some of them. So yeah, this is just a small example of what I was seeing. One thing that I did come across that was very interesting, most of them were CC where the mint mark was visible, but 2 of them actually had an S mint mark. So that suggested that these weren't all from Carson City, that one of these was from San Francisco, 2 of these were from San Francisco. So I was talking to a friend about this in the hobby, and they told me that in a hoard like this might be a good sign, because if they're all the same mint mark, then that might suggest that they were fake, because people were just cloning the transfer dyes or whatever, and then just damaging them up and throwing them away. But that someone had made a different dye that's like a slightly implausible, slightly less likely. So it was more likely that the whatever ship was carrying these had different silver dollars from the 2 mints, which was a common way to transport dollars. They would take dollars from both mints and load them onto the same ship and then send them across the Pacific. So that was an interesting find, to say the least. And again, you can see the variety of the damage on this compared to the other 2. So this is a larger group photo of everything that I found. It's not the entire collection. These are 40 of the dollars out of everything that was part of the hoard. In the end, I concluded that were 54 apparently sea salvage trade dollars from 1874, CCS mint mark dollars, but I had no idea as to where they came from, how they got in this condition, why they looked like this, why some of them were as dark as night and some of them were shiny, and it was all, and some of them had these weird iron rusting residue on them when silver doesn't rust, but the coin was showing up as 90% silver, so why was there rust on it? There are all these questions going through my mind. So these are the steps that I took to try and figure out what was going on, and I had a lot of help from friends. So the way this presentation is going to go is I'm going to talk about how I possibly found which ship they might have come from, a little bit history of the ship, and then finally we're going to talk about if these are authentic from the ship or fakes. I won't dispute that that could be a possibility, but I think I'm just going to present all my thoughts to you, everything that I've discovered, all the facts that I found, all the speculation that my friends have thrown at me, and everything that I've thought of, and then you can make your own decision at the end. I'm going to put up a straw poll, and if that's okay, Liana, you don't have to reply. You can just tell me no at the end, but I can put up a straw poll, and then you guys can decide for yourself if you think they're fake or real after everything I've shown you. So I had so many questions when I found these dollars. The first one was, of course, were they real? And if so, where did they come from? I also wanted to know, how did they get into this condition? And more importantly, how did they get to where they are now? It's not like they grew a pair of legs and walk out of the ocean themselves, but for some reason they were floating around shops between China and Hong Kong. So yeah, these are just some of the things. And so I started to talk with a lot of my friends on the online community. As I mentioned, I've been working on a few social media and sharing platforms. And so I was asking a bunch of friends to help me with this discovery. And we were speculating about where these could have come from, if they're in fact trade dollars and they were from a wreck. The first thing would be to find a wreck. As we said, the dealer had no idea which wreck it could be. It's just that he picked them up from the shop, and the shop said they just smoked their hands on them, and that's all we knew. We had no other information other than the dollars and the year and the mint mark. Oh, and also that they came from Fujian province, or from that Fujian area, so just slightly north of Guangzhou, opposite the island of Taiwan. So this was the first clue that we got as to what ship they might have come from. So while we were doing some chatting, one of my friends, I think he's here tonight, pulled up this write-up, and we were quite pleased to find it, but we weren't entirely sure because some of the details weren't matching up. So the SS Japan 4,000-ton Pacific Mail specific ship, just before midnight on December 17th, 1874, a fire broke out on the deck, and there are 400 casualties. But at the same time, the ship was also carrying a cargo of US trade dollars from 98 to $375,000. And then we couldn't find anything if it was if it was trade dollars or if it was Mexican dollars or something else. The site of the sinking is described as near Swatow, between Hong Kong and Yokohama. For those who aren't very strong in geography, Yokohama is all the way in Japan. So that's suddenly a very huge range to have between a small island at the bottom of China and Yokohama all the way up north in China. So yeah, but they did say about 20 miles up from the coast of Hong Kong. So we were just digesting this information, and then the name came up that this was actually a book, and the book was Voices from the Bottom of the South China Sea, and there was the name from the author, Robert Wells. So okay, that's nice. Maybe we can come back to this and we can figure out if this is relevant to us. Unbeknownst to me, one of my other contacts in my little group went out and took the initiative and just straight up contacted the author and said, "Hey, I've got one of the coins from your shipwreck." And so so I was pleasantly surprised. I started getting emails, and I was going to get a phone call from Mr. Wells after my friend talked to him. And so the information that I'm about to share with you about the wreck is kindly provided by Mr. Wells and his publisher. So I just want to say thank you for that to both him and his organization for helping. This is very interesting. So when I initially saw that post, I decided to try and look it up myself to see if I could corroborate what was being said, and I was curious, but for the life of me, I couldn't find any of this information online. And it seems that Google Analytics had treated Mr. Wells' book very poorly, his website very poorly, because when you type in SS Japan in Google, at least for me and my friends, when we typed it in, we got secondhand Japanese car sales. They would export cars out of Japan. It doesn't matter. The point is we couldn't find anything about the SS Japan on the internet. And for the life of us, we couldn't figure out why. Even on Wikipedia, they have an entire page dedicated to wrecks every year. In recorded history, and every month. So you can actually go through, say, 1874 and go through from January to December and click through and check. And in that entire range, we couldn't find anything about the SS Japan. So it was a pleasant surprise to find out that there was an entire website and book dedicated to this wreck. And yeah, it was quite interesting. The dates lined up. And so we decided to investigate a bit further. And the context that will be provided from this book actually helps explain the condition of the coins a little bit as well, if that's what they are. So again, I just want to say thanks to Mr. Wells for providing this information. I do highly recommend that if you're interested in shipwrecks, regardless of this presentation and these coins, you go out and get it, because it is a very interesting story, and I hope I can provide an interesting taster of that. But you can go to southchinavoices.com if you're so interested in finding more about the wreck after this, because I'm only going to provide a brief overview based on the time I have. The book comes with maps and other information as well, so if you want to go out diving yourself, I don't recommend it, but it's there if you want it. So this is the SS Japan, and it was one of many ships approved for construction by President Abraham Lincoln 2 months before his assassination. President Lincoln had the foresight and the vision to start trading between America and China after the Civil War, and was a keen proponent to such an extent that he was getting these ships ready to sail across the Pacific. He got 4 of them started up, or at least their goal was to transport the trade dollars from the United States to China to pick up cargo and bring back, and also to carry the Chinese laborers that were going to be used for building the railroad and most of the expansions out into the west of the United States. So many coolies, laborers, railroad workers, they were going to come from China, work in America for several years, and then go back home to China with their profits. And the ship went from San Francisco to Yokohama and then down to Hong Kong. It was a coal ship, partial coal, partial sail, steam paddle ship. Had 2 great paddles, one on each side. And yeah, it was quite the marvel for its time. Mark Twain considered it a palace. and many people had a good opinion of it. So it was quite the ship of its time. There were about 550 passengers on the SS Japan, based on the wreck we're going to talk about. Majority of them were Chinese laborers who had just finished working in America. Some of them had been in the United States for nearly a decade. When they spoke to people about their work, some of them had not seen their family this entire time. There was no phone, there was no telegram, there was no easy way to communicate with family back home in China. They probably didn't know how to write a letter that could get through the US postal system to China. But yeah, so some of them had no idea how their family were doing, and their family had no idea if their husbands were still alive. These people had spent so long in America earning as much money as they could from the work they were doing. And they assumed that the families were okay because they hadn't seen any or heard any news from China about famines or droughts or wars. So they were pretty moderate spirits, pretty high spirits, ready to go home. You can see a large amount of the people on the ship included crew, about 120, some of which were Chinese as well. So there would have been a lot of Cantonese and on the ship, a lot of people talking Chinese on the ship, a few Europeans. And then besides the passengers, there was also the cargo. So obviously the part we want to focus on tonight is the trade dollars from San Francisco and Carson City. According to the manifest, there were about 168 boxes. Each box contained about 2,000 trade dollars, all wrapped in their original mint wrapping paper, wax paper, as well as being in the boxes provided by the mint. So just put them at a value of about 350,000 US dollars. The book suggests that they are probably from 1872 to 1874. And they were loaded into a 10 by 6 foot treasure tank at the bottom of the ship. So this was a large flat iron container that was in the shape of an iron. So it had a tipped point and then a flat end at the back. And so these were all crammed in there and locked up in the treasure tank at the bottom, separate from the rest of the cargo. But besides this, it also carried other cargo as well. The ship was carrying the Purses combination lock safe with approximately $8,000 in gold and other specie. And there was also 620 tons of cargo that had been picked up in Japan. When it reached Yokohama, some of the crew had bought some items, including a large religious icon that was going to be set up at a church. There were several mail bags as well. And then the personal effects of the passengers and crew. The reason I want to bring this up is that the Chinese passengers, if I know my heritage, I know my Chinese people, I have a feeling that they weren't very trusting of leaving their money in their bags in stowage. And this is obviously the case because the Chinese passengers were carrying their pay on their person in money belts or sewn into their clothes. A lot of it was gold coins. Some of them, the book mentions some of them were $20 gold coins. So yeah, they didn't want to leave it in their bags for someone to rifle through it and steal their coins later. So they actually carried their money on them. And so this will be relevant for later. So this is a conception of the fire, obviously, no photographs or CCTV. So this is an impression of the fire that occurred on the 17th of December, 1874, 20 miles off the coast of China. It broke out at around 11:25 p.m. At least that's when the cry of fire was heard on deck. Thick black smoke was coming out of the engine room, ventilators, the forward section, and it's quickly breaking out into full-on flames. It maybe started in the foreroom or the bunkers or the freight deck. It's not entirely sure. But one thing is for sure, quickly grew out of control, and it didn't help that the engine room pumps were in that section where the fire was occurring, so the pumps weren't starting, and so the water for the hoses couldn't be put onto the fires. They couldn't get the water started. The fire hoses started, and so that didn't help the situation. The fire effectively cut the ship in half, and the passengers and the crew started to go to the forward section or the stern section, top decks. sad thing as well is most of the lifeboats were in the middle of the ship. So, and the fact the fire was there as well made access to the lifeboats quite difficult. Nevertheless, after the fire grew out of control, the captain ordered the ship to be abandoned at 1 a.m. But due to the lack of access to the lifeboats and the stormy conditions, it was quite difficult. There were large sea swells, wind-driven waves, poor weather conditions. So yeah, the crew and the passengers weren't able to load into the lifeboats very easily. And there were only 151 survivors across 8 boats. The passengers who were unable to make it to the boats or who were in a panic state jumped overboard. And the waves, on top of the fact that they were also carrying their gold in their pockets, meant they drowned very quickly. And they just sank right to the bottom, pulled down by the weight of their own clothing and money, which was horrible. Once the lifeboats were trying to rescue people out of the water as well, but the sea swells made it so difficult to pull people out of the water that it made it quite rescue almost impossible. Some people were holding on to bits of flotsam or debris that fallen off the ship due to the fire, but most of them just went straight down. The book itself is interesting to read because it describes some of the lifeboats, how they got back. I won't go into too much detail. Some of them made it back to Hong Kong or China under their own power. Some of them were picked up by passing fishing vessels and Chinese junk ships. But nevertheless, the ship sank at some point during the night, but I don't think it was witnessed. The storm was so bad and the lifeboats were so eager to get back to shore that no one actually witnessed the ship sinking. The approximate position of the ship was recorded by one of the crew. And a treasure map, a map of the wreck was later drawn from memory, which is in the book as well. But yeah, later I believe the U.S. Navy was in the area patrolling for pirates, and there were some other ships in the area as well. So once they heard news about the ship going down, they went out to look for survivors in the ship itself, but they found nothing. They found a couple of bodies, a little bit of debris, nothing else. The ship went down entirely. And yeah, that was that. That was the sad end to the SS Japan. So since it was containing such a large amount of trade dollars, it was decided the best thing to do would be to try and salvage the species. So it was new technology at the time, but it was actually possible. And so they knew the ship was somewhere 20 miles off the coast of China. After speaking to the surviving crew, they were able to find a location, and they went out and searched the area and eventually found it a few months later in 1875. The ship was then salvaged by professional divers for the next year and a half until 1877. So these are just examples of what divers looked like back in the time, wearing the diving armor, their breathing tubes. The technology was crude in comparison to ours, but it was possible. And the book describes the pioneering technology and the people in charge of it. And this was one of the deepest dives to salvage a ship at the time. So it was really quite interesting to read about that aspect of this kind of operation. The parts of the ship were found at 23 fathoms, which I've put in feet and meters, 138 feet or 42 meters at the bottom of the South China Sea. And the ship had split in two, possibly due to the fire. The divers described the ship as having been burned all the way down to the bottom deck. And I guess as the ship went down, it split, much like the Titanic. They found the section with the treasure tank, I believe the forward section of the ship, the forward and the forward midship section. And over the year and a half they were recovering, they were actually able to recover 300,000 trade dollars. Salvage was done over many sessions by different ships. Different crews were able to recover different amounts of the ship at the time, and then the silver was returned to the underwriters who were financing the operation. Let me see now. So here's an example of the day that they found the silver dollars himself. And on the morning of that day, Captain Roberts believed that the whole enterprise would end there, and Japan and her treasure would be allowed to rest undisturbed forevermore. But on his last plunge for the season, the diver managed to push his hand through a hole in the tank and secured a black lump resembling a piece of coal. The lump on examination proved to consist of 24 American trade dollars, burned and oxidized so much that they required a great deal of scouring to reveal their true character. So keep in mind the condition of the coins here, and also the fact that there was a hole in the tank, that the divers, I don't think they created that. They were pulling up a few other things as well, but mainly they were focused on the dollars. The ship was quite deep enough and made of wood and iron that the pressure would have been enough to do some damage to the ship, but not that much. So, record of the 600 tons of cargo being recovered, that's possibly still down there. And at the same time, the safe, the purser's safe, was never recovered. There was no effort to try and recover the bodies of the Chinese carrying the gold in their coats. And as I mentioned, $300,000 were recovered. That means there were still 50,000 trade dollars. But they weren't able to get them all. The ship suggests that most of them would be on the port side of the treasure tank. But I'll discuss why that might not be the case. It's pure speculation, but it needs to be discussed nevertheless. There's also, Leanna, am I doing okay? I just got to pop up my internet, it's unstable.
Yeah, it glitched out a little bit, but I don't think we lost any actual content. You seem to be coming through okay?
Okay, thanks for that, just double checking. I'll continue now if that's all right.
Go for it.
Thank you.
No problem.
So, right, where was I? So yeah, the other thing was that they found one of the steam paddle wheels, and they only found the forward section of the ship. The rear section with the purser's cabin and other cargo hasn't been found yet. They only found the forward section of the treasure tank, so that in itself is interesting as well. So that's the history of the SS Japan and the cargo it carried, and so that gave me a lot of context as to what had happened to these dollars if these were in fact from the SS Japan. As these, I didn't find them, but I think based on the information I'm about to share with you, maybe perhaps this is where they might have come from. I'm gonna share my thoughts and processes and the things I discussed with friends and the facts we uncovered and the details we went over these past 6 months. In the end, whether I convince you or not, or whether you think this is the biggest pile of hooey you've ever heard, it's up to you. Like I said, it's more just a sharing of what's been going on, and perhaps there's something to be taken from this. So, as I said, the 4 questions at the beginning of the presentation are coming back now after all this information has been reviewed. Are they real, and are they from the SS Japan? These are the questions that we need to discuss. So the first thing I wanted to point out was the inconsistent and irregular damage. Some of them appeared to have mottling that was consistent with seawater damage, but at the same time, the black marks and the strange discoloration and some of the other damage isn't consistent with seawater damage. But the main thing to note is that none of the damage of them are bright, shiny, silver white. Olives are stained as brown and black as coffee. Some are clean, some are chipped, some are cracked. One thing I also mentioned, so how is this effect? So the ships may have not been directly exposed to fire, or at least not for very long. So I did a little bit of sleuthing, and I've got some numbers. The main thing to consider is that the coins were supposed to be insulated inside the treasure tank, but they were wrapped in wooden paper. Perhaps there was some combustion of the material they were sitting in through thermal transfer. So coal can burn anywhere from 550 to 2,500 degrees centigrade, which for Americans here is 1,000 to 4,500 Fahrenheit. Silver melts at 1,760 degrees Fahrenheit. Iron melts at 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. And wood combusts at 570 degrees Fahrenheit. So the fire was over and around the tank. It may have caused it to act like an oven, which may have caused some of the wood inside and the paper inside to burn up. As we mentioned, there was a hole in the side of the tank. If the fire had managed to get hot enough in some places, it may have breached the tank. We don't know how long the fire burned. No one was there to witness it. The crew and the passengers had all left by the time the fire was well raging, and we don't know when it finally went out and when the ship finally sank. So it's all pure speculation. And if we could be a fly in the wall at that time, it would be quite interesting. But if these are from the SS Japan, that might explain the condition of the coins. Some of them have managed to get in contact with fire or exposed to heavy coal smoke. We don't know. Could the tank have acted as an oven, as a furnace for some of these dollars? Fire got in. So if that's the case, that might explain the variety of damage. Are they real? Are they real dollars even? Not just are they from the SS Japan, but are they even real? So that was one of the main concerns I had when I came across the slot. And so I started to do some investigating, get some high resolution photos, compare them to fakes and known real graded authenticated dollars to see if the details could be spotted. The photos that I used and the scans and the high definition photos are going to be made available at the end of the presentation. So you can join me in trying to do your own investigation. For now, this is the process that I went through because currently authentication in Hong Kong is practically impossible due to COVID and the lack of airmail and just the overwhelming popularity of grading companies at the moment. If I want to send in anything to PCGS or NGC, turnaround is approximately 10 months at the moment. So even if I'd started back in November, I still wouldn't have any results in time for this. But I haven't been working in echo chamber. I've been talking to other collectors of trade dollars and crowns. And so I hope that some of the things they've talked to me about and some of the things I've seen help convince you to the same conclusion I have. These appear to be real trade dollars. So the main parts we'll be focusing on is, since these are early type 1 trade dollars based on the year, we're going to be looking at the 3 fingers holding the branch, as well as the berry under the claw, and the arrow in a specific direction towards the middle of the 420. Some other details as well to consider would be the tassels at the end of the ribbon, Liberty on the obverse. A lot of the counterfeiters have difficulty with this and other details on the coin and end up messing it up to no degree, as well as the fonts and some of the smaller details. So these are some of the areas I was really fixated on, where I could see details on the coins. One of the challenges also having while trying to figure these out was the damage was so varied. Some of them were basically obliterated, as you know. Some of them only had partial visibility. So I was kind of mentally, I was cutting the coins into pizzas and checking different quadrants and sections of the coins against others and whatever resources I had on hand. I tried to check the rim as well. So here's a picture of that, if that means anything to you. It's the third facing the coin, and I admit I'm guilty of ignoring that sometimes, but I decided to record it. But again, you can see the damage is extensive, so I don't know if there's any use. The CC mint marks are very well recorded in American numismatic literature. I didn't have the tools to get it exactly, but what I could measure, they seem to be within range for the micro or miniature type mint marks that are known on 1873, 1874 trade dollars. And then this is me comparing the dollars to fakes. So even though it's 1877, overall basic pattern should still be the same. And some of the things you can see here is the tassels of the ribbon are too long. They'd use chop marks to disguise the coin. The face, obviously too flat. Her nose is basically missing. She looks like Palpatine or Voldemort. Yeah, and the fonts were too thick and the reading was too mushy, the security edge around here. So, but if we compare it to, say, the top population 1874 CC trade dollar from PCGS, I was able to actually overlay one photo on top of the other and make them transparent, and they seem to match up pretty well. It's identical, minus the damage, of course. Even though these were straight out of the mint, they didn't do well after a roasting and a couple 100 years under the South China Sea. But yeah, I encourage you to look at the photos later and make your own conclusions. Same for the reverse. One of the things the counterfeiters have trouble with is the mouth of the eagle. It's too open. It's basically ajar, whereas over here it should be shut. No berry on this type because, again, it's a late type. The arrow seems to be pointing completely the wrong direction anyway. And again, the font seems kind of funky, and they disguised it with chops. The feathers had the wrong mottling and the wrong patterns. And again, compared to top population from PCGS. And again, overlaying them, I wasn't seeing any issues with an 1874 and MS66 and the one that I had in hand and the ones I was examining. So yeah, it was kind of fun trying to play spot difference between the fakes and the reals and the dollars that I had in hand. But at the end, what I considered the facts was that I had type 1 obverse and reverses that was visible on all the coins. One berry underclaw, arrows pointing to the 2 and 420, 3 fingers on the obverse, short tails on the end of the ribbon, and the font all seemed okay. You see now. So one thing to note is the fake is the expected outcome of a fake. It does minor damage to distract from flaws. The fake. Right, this is a fake that most American collectors are used to seeing. Right, there's some damage, there's some scuffing of the coin. In this case, there are chop marks to try and distract the eye. Right, but they're still but the coin itself is still recognizable, so that there's an off chance that it could fool a collector. A person who wants to trade dollar will look for a trade dollar, regardless if it's they'll try and find one and make their own reasoning in their mind. But when they do the damage, you can see that it's not a massive detracting factor. An ugly coin won't sell well. So if you're making a coin like this fake, why are you defacing it to such a degree? In some cases, to a point that you can't even recognize it. What are you hoping to achieve as a counterfeiter? So that's something I considered while I was looking at these. Would someone take a dollar and do this when it seems that they had the ability to do something like this from PCGS? Based on the details, it seems they had, if these were fake, they had the dies to make really nice dollars. So then why would they scuff them to this degree and damage them to such a degree and damage them all individually? Something that crossed my mind. Maybe it'll cross yours as well. So besides considering were they real or were they fake, also had to consider, are they from the SS Japan? So my friends and I started sleuthing the internet and going through literature to see if there's any other records of other ships using trade dollars in significant amounts. And one potential source was from the same company but a different ship, the SS Yokohama, but that burned in 1872. So, and all the treasure from its tank, whether that be obviously it wasn't trade dollars because it was too early anyway, but whether that be the previous type of dollar, or whether that just be straight bullion or Spanish dollars, we don't know, but we do know that it was all recovered because the ship didn't even sink. It kind of just rested on the harbor on the floor, and then the treasure tank, all the treasure was recorded as recovered immediately after the fire and the sinking. There was also a typhoon that occurred in 1874 in Hong Kong and in the area. It was quite powerful. It sank many ships, but we couldn't find any record of any ships going down with a significant amount of American trade dollars. So, but still, it's another possibility to consider. Perhaps we missed something. Someone suggested that these might have come from the Battle of Fuzhou, which is off the coast of Fujian. But again, the year is a bit late, and most of the ships participating in the battle were French, to my recollection. So I'm not entirely confident in this theory either. But these were the only things that we could find that seemed to match up to the type of coins we were finding and the condition that they were in. Another thing to consider was that none of the coins from the hoard were chop marked. So chop marks are a whole different rabbit hole, and I hope one day some of the people here who I know are watching, Taylor, I hope one day you can give a lovely presentation on the NMP Symposium about that as well. I won't go too deeply into it today. Suffice to say that chop marking coins was standard practice in China back then for internal and external financial security, for the purposes of stealing silver, doing business. Pretty much anything silver that came into China was chopped by the merchants that operated there. Most of the dollars were cut to pieces. Others were melted down and turned into ingots for local trade in China. But in order to do that, they had to pierce the surface of the coin and make sure that there was no copper or lead underneath. Because if they started mixing base metals into their ingots and then sending them off to the government or to their merchants for trade, they'd be pretty much hanged on the spot and put out of business. So American trade dollars were also very popular because they were slightly heavier. I believe the general practice at the time was 26.9 grams for an ounce of silver. But American trade dollars, I believe, were 27.22. And so most of those, as soon as they were chopped, they were put straight into the pot for melting. And so those that survive are actually quite lucky because the Chinese love melting these down for the extra free silver that they got. But pretty much anything that ended up in China ended up getting chopped. And none of these coins that I were looking at were chopped, suggesting that none of them made it to shore in China. We also tried to find out why the information of the SS Japan was so difficult to find. And it turned out that most of the information was lost during the Great Earthquake of 1906. The offices of the steamship company were actually located in the city, and the entire building collapsed and burned to the ground, including all the records and all the information pertaining to the SS Japan and its sinking and salvage. I don't know how the author of the book managed to find this information. Hats off to him. I guess he went to other parties, other sources, congressional libraries, or other companies, or the investigation that took place into the sinking of the ship is recorded in the book. And that's also interesting when they were talking to the crew and the survivors. So I guess some information is pulled from there. But considering that this is what Mr. Wells had to dig through in order to find out information about the ship, it deserves a round of applause in itself. But that's what made the SS Japan such an obscure wreck. I believe that's important to this because this information wasn't readily available until quite recently. And if it was available, it was only available in America and in English. So anyone who wanted to try and make fake trade dollars that came from this wreck would have to go through an even harder task than Mr. Wells himself, in my opinion. I don't know when he started, but the book was published in 2015. It was released in China with some fanfare, and there's some websites, but not many. And the book was only ever published in English, to my understanding. And ever since then, until now, it was hardly reported. So none of these discount or push the theory that these coins came from the SS Japan. These are just some of the things we looked at, but based on what we could find, they seem to point to the fact that these were from the Japan because nothing else was left. At least nothing that made sense anyway in our minds. But of course, if you find something, you're more than welcome to share and put me out of my misery. So are they from the Japan? Another thing to consider is the silver composition. So as I stated before, I had a device that allowed me to check the resistivity of precious metals, but didn't allow me to see the composition. In order to see the composition, you need to do one of two things. You either need to melt down the coin and then put it through a test which pretty much obliterates the entire coin itself, or you use an X-ray device called an X-ray fluorescent scanner. So some of the coins ended up in America, and of course the people who had the coins were as curious as me. Some of them had access to this X-ray machine. And this is the email I got one day from Mr. Wells, who had been in touch with one of the researchers. And so Peyton reports that his X-ray of the 1874 trade dollar checked out with the coins demonstrating above 90% silver content, ranging from around that 90 point up to 97.8%, just as an El Cazador Rec 8 Reales would test. So they are the real deal. So that was very interesting. And these are the pictures that I got from my friend over in the States. And you can see the silver here is 90% and the copper is 7.5. Now, according to Mint records, all trade dollars were 90% silver and 10% copper. So why was there only 7.5% copper in this, making this a 92.5% silver coin? And there's actually a scientific reason for that, related to silver coin being in seawater. So it all comes down to electrolysis. The metals in the seawater was commonplace. The silver copper alloy can itself act like both an anode and a cathode, and the resulting reaction causes microscopic copper grains to leach out of the alloy, starting at the surface first. Hundreds of years in salt water can result in leaching that penetrates deeply into the coin. You end up with the coin with a spongy interior. Doesn't mean the coin is soft. It means there are air bubbles inside where the copper used to be. The result of such corrosion often is a coin which yields a higher apparent percentage of silver and a lower percentage of copper when tested using XRF. The actual science behind this and a deep explanation is provided by someone from an online coin community called Swamper Bob. It was shown to me by a friend, Eric. I'm very grateful. So if you want to read the science behind this, the link will be provided at the end of the presentation. You can check it out yourself. But what we're basically saying is that if a silver dollar has spent a significant amount of time in seawater, you'll see that show up in an XRF result. So I did my own test result as well in Hong Kong. It wasn't easy because radioactive material is much more restricted in Hong Kong than, say, in America. You guys can get access to one of those XRF guns and just pull it into a shop and just wave it around. It's amazing. But over here, you need a license and you need a special shop. So I had to go to a precious metal laboratory run by one of the major jewelry companies. And even then, they were shut for a majority of the fifth wave of COVID we've been having here recently. So I only just got the results back. But this is the trade dollar, and you can see the same sort of results here: 94% silver, 1.4% copper. I don't know where the platinum came from. I don't know where the lead came from. My understanding is the early trade dollars had a little bit of lead contamination they couldn't get under control. I don't know where the iron came from. The only possible fact is that this coin was supposed to be resting in a treasure tank made entirely of iron. Due to the electrolysis effect, was some of the iron getting into the coin, was some of the rust residue left on top of the coin. Sometimes, I think Leanna can explain at some point in the future if she ever talks about her adventures with XRF, but from my understanding, sometimes the machine can misread some elements as another. So this might actually not be present in the coin at all. Usually there are small offshoots though, and they're usually quite understandable. So the main point, though, is that we were seeing higher than normal amounts of silver and lower than normal amounts of copper, which suggested that these coins have spent a significant amount of time in seawater or salt water. The reaction usually takes at least 50 years minimum, and all the coins were tested and they all had different results. Just an example, you can see this one is 7% copper and this one's 1.4. As a reminder, they had many different results. And so if someone wanted to make fakes of these, they would have to make silver dollars with different silver and copper combinations on every individual coin, possibly. I don't know. We'll discuss that later. So finally, if these were from the SS Japan, and if these were pulled out of the seawater, how did they end up from the bottom of the ocean into a shop in Fujian, into a shop in Hong Kong, and into my hands? This is something that we had to speculate on because the seller had no idea how he got it, how they ended up, and he wasn't able to remember where he got them from. At least we were finding the damage, the year, the type, the mint marks were consistent with the descriptions and records that we'd found so far. And interestingly, after some digging around, these have actually been spotted before. And I don't mean these 50 coins, I mean another batch. So someone with, I don't know how to say this, more inquisitiveness than me, posted the pictures on Facebook and asked, are these real? Which is fair. It's totally fine and part of the discourse. And it actually created a very interesting result. Someone in the coin community said out of the blue that these were legitimate, that they were from a shipwreck. This is the post that was on Facebook, and after some sleuthing and some discussion and some conversation, we found out that 20 or 30 of these types of trade dollars had appeared in America before in 2018 at an A&A show in Philadelphia. And the guy had bought them and sold them, and they hadn't been able to attribute them, but apparently the SS Japan sounded familiar to them, but they hadn't done as much prodding as I had. Perhaps I'm insane, but they decided to just say, these are from a shipwreck, take them or leave them, and sold them at a show. So there are apparently 20 or 30 or so more of these floating around the United States before even I had heard of them. And the fact that someone shared them on Facebook helped them recollect that these had appeared in the States before. So that was interesting. And if anyone here watching knows where those are, please get in touch with Mr. Wells on the website southchinavoices.com immediately, because we're very interested to hear where those dollars ended up. The poster of this message even went so far as to compare the dollars to Minifacord's die patterns on record, and confirm them to be from the mint somehow. So yeah, the details are there, but very foggy. It's lost in the passage of time. So anyone with any leads on that, we'd love to hear from you. So now it comes to the speculative part, the really speculative part. How did they appear in the market? How are they getting out of the ocean and into the hands of people like me? And the first theory is it a fishing boat? Are ships bottom trawling along the bottom of the South China Sea? Just for those of you unaware, seafood is a massive component of the Chinese diet in this area and in Asia. And so fishing boats from all over the region will do whatever they can to get fish from the sea onto people's plates. And the regulation may not be that strong, but yeah, it's a possibility. Another one to consider might be divers. People have been going down to get coins out of the wreck themselves. Again, we don't know. But if they were, surely we'd be seeing more. Because if once they find something as valuable as this one, they're going back for more. Another possibility, could they have come from the original salvage operation? The trade dollars ended up with the underwriters, but beyond that, I don't know what happened after that. I don't think the book goes into detail to that. I need to discuss with Mr. Wells, but from my understanding, they would have been melted down and used as straight bullion, because no one would have accepted them in the dirty oxidized condition they were recovered. So based on these simple theories, and if you have more, you're more than welcome to share how these got out of the ocean, but it seems to be that they were picked up by a fishing boat, specifically bottom trawling. So here's a diagram of what that looks like. And it's a prohibited practice now, but back then it wasn't. And regulation in China can be lax or ignored sometimes by some unscrupulous individuals. And the process of bottom trawling is dragging an extremely heavy metal net across the bottom of the seafloor and picking up whatever you can find. It's extremely destructive. Originally, the proponents of the practice said, oh no, it just floats on the top. But once underwater camera technology was invented, this was confirmed to be the case, where the net was just simply dragged across the bottom. And these aren't just simple like little fishing nets, these are proper big metal nets that are expected to pick up all kinds of things, not just seafood. And they dig quite deeply into the ground. And so it's a possibility that some of the nets ended going over the wreck of the SS Japan. And it's the only example I can think of, but if you think of those Japanese claw machines, those UFO claw grabber machines, where it takes like 1,000 tries to get one plush animal, if the ship had been at the bottom of the South China Sea for 180 years, 170 years, and then industrial fishing started showing up in the 1970s, so you've got 5 decades of ships running over this site wreck, possibly daily, weekly, and it's not unfathomable that 1 or 2 of them could get lucky and pick something up with enough goes, with enough runs over the wreck. So to me at the moment, this is the leading theory as to how these ended up. Some fishermen ran over the SS Japan shipwreck. These nets can go up to 2,000 meters, I think, 2,000 feet or something like that. I can't remember. They can go really deep. So 42 meters is nothing to them. And it's right off the coast of Fujian, which is a massive fishing port and a massive consumer of seafood, as well as Hong Kong and Taiwan are within range as well. So it's not inconceivable that one of these ships ran over the wreck, pulled up some of the wreckage. The crew were curious, started cleaning it up and realized what it was. brought it into port, and sold it to the nearest vendor they could find because they didn't know the value of what they found, or they just didn't care. That's my theory. It might be overstretched or outdrawn or just completely ludicrous. Please let me know. And of course, as I've stated many times, perhaps these are fake. I won't dismiss the theory completely, but I will say I feel like it's low probability. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get this information out there. I don't like work. I've shared this information with many friends. We've been discussing this over and over again, looking at all the possibilities. And this is the information that you would need in order to make convincing SS Japan fakes. You would need good quality transfer dyes, both type 1 reverse and obverse from 74, Carson City and San Francisco. They'd have to be very convincing. You would then have to, well, I'm running over time here, sorry, I just realized. Have to have, each coin would need to have 90% silver mixed in with varying amounts of coffers that could defeat both XRF and precious metals. You need realistic seawater damage, individual damage, knowledge about the SS Japan and the fire that occurred. So yeah, and the conditions of the coins after the salvage. So based on the information, I would just say in the words of someone very famous, ain't nobody got time for that, Kimberly Wilkins. So when they just do this 100,000 times. So yeah, sorry, Gleanna, for overrunning. Didn't mean to stress you out. I'm sure you're screaming at the camera right now, telling me to stop talking, so I will. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's helped. Steve Larkins, Robert Wells, his publisher, Taylor, Eric, Dan, Adam, Bickford, Eric Lynn. So many of you have all been very helpful. Kurt and Peyton, thank you very much. Yeah, there may be some archaeologists going out there and visiting a site, and in September 2023, and I'll be vindicated or I'll be eviscerated then when they start pulling coins out of the water. So yeah, I guess the last thing is just to run the straw poll. So there's a link for you here, and if you want to vote on what you think, I'd love to hear. The link is right there, so you can just type it in while we're doing the questions now. And then the links for the science behind the silver and the photo album where all the coins are all there if you want to have a look yourself. Sorry for the low quality, I'm not a great photographer. I've done what I can. Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, and you're good on time. We have until 11:30 before the next group starts, so.
Okay, I heard a bleep 5 minutes ago, so I thought that was you basically pounding at the door. Shut up, shut up.
Nope, not me. You're
okay,
good.
then I can go over a little bit more detail. Regardless of, don't worry, regardless of the outcome of whether these coins are fake or real, the main thing is that interest in the wreck has been renewed. It was very quiet and very obscure, and now a lot of people are coming out and asking questions and trying to investigate. So as I said, the Chinese archaeological authorities are going out and planning a site trip. A documentary may be made in the near future about the shipwreck. I think golden rectangles possibly might get involved, I don't know. And people are looking for the descendants of the survivors around Jinmin. So regardless of the outcome of my little venture, the main thing is that I've started a little explosion of interest in the ship again, and I hope it continues and something good comes out of it, which is the main thing for me. So yeah, okay, I'm done. Now you can tell me to shut up. Okay, thanks.
Okay, since you have the link on there, we'll leave your screen share up for a little while. Anyone in the audience, if you're having trouble getting to that, just send something in the Q&A and we'll help you out. Otherwise, go ahead and send in any questions that you have. We have 1 or 2 in here already, so go ahead and send those in. And we'll start off with, do you have any plans to have them authenticated in the future, for example, at PCGS?
As I said, authentication at the moment is quite impossible. It's nearly a year's waiting time. And at the moment, a majority of the coins aren't with me. I only have a single example on me at the moment. The rest of them are with Peyton over in the United States. A few of my friends have some examples as well. So at the moment, no plans. I may do mine eventually once things get better. In the meantime, I'm happy to say if you want to see the coins for yourselves, you can reach out to Peyton on Instagram. It's Classic Kid Coins, all one word. He has the majority, and he's given me the okay to share that information. Don't worry, I'm not doxing him. So yeah, if you're very curious, Classic Kid Coins on Instagram, all one word. It's a picture of I think it's a beaver. It's a very excited beaver. No, is it a bear wearing a lot of gold necklaces? I don't. That's his logo. I don't know. I don't design these things, but very cool guy, very helpful, very chill. He's got the majority. He's got 40 pieces on him at the moment. So yeah, if anyone has any questions or want to see some photos or want to bug him, yeah, feel free. But at the moment, no, there's no chance for authentication because of logistics of it. And at the same time, I do eventually hope to get some of the coins over there. I don't think they'll be attributed as SS Japan because, like I said, I didn't dive for these. There's no proof they came from this ship. Everything I've shared, the facts I've shared are just speculative and theory crafting, eliminating as many variables as possible. But in the end, unless there's actual video or photographic footage that went out there and dove for them, there's no way to get the attribution without that. Possibly seawater or environmental damage is the best I can hope for genuine. But yeah, hopefully one day I hope to get the coins once this whole situation dies down with COVID and the lack of airmail over here. I know over there it's almost gone for you guys, but I don't know if you've seen the news coming out of China. It's still treated like the black bubonic plague over here, so out of my control, and PCGS as well is suffering as a result of that. So yeah, one day, but it'll have to be some far point in the future.
Eventually.
Eventually. In the meantime, though, the people who have been looking at the dollars with me, not to put PCGS down at all, but these are people who live and breathe trade dollars and silver dollars. Like I said, I don't like working in an echo chamber, and the people I've been dealing with handle trade dollars on a daily basis. So I've been sending them the dollars, and they've been taking photos and checking them out. And out of the dozen or so experts I've had these in the hands of people, no one's complained. People have handled them and said, yeah, they seem precisely average to me. And no one's rose up. Actually, this detail stands out. Nothing serious like that. So that's enough for me at the moment. Hopefully we can get some more verifiable facts, but yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Okay, we do have someone in the audience who's having trouble accessing the straw poll.
So
we're going to take a little survey through Zoom itself, so you don't have to open a new window.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah.
So for the people watching on Zoom, if you move your mouse around at the bottom of the Zoom window, you should see a button that says raise hand. If you believe that these coins were from or probably from the SS Japan, click on that raise hand button, and I'll give you a minute to get our hands up, and then we'll see where we are.
You're so clever. I never thought of using the hand function to do that. Yeah, that's great. I'm a teacher, and I don't use Zoom for teaching. I use Google Classroom. So of course I've never done that before.
Yeah, we've had a few presenters use it in the past, but not very often.
I can't see the results I can't raise my hand in my own presentation, so that prevents me from rigging the results, if that means anything. You can tell, yeah, if you think they're from Japan, you can raise your hand. If you don't have to. Oh, we've got about 27 people, so that gives us an idea of what we're looking for.
It looks like we have about a little over half of the people are raising their hands.
That's fair. That's fine. That's not terrible. That's fine. It's like I said, it's all theory crafting and all speculation, but the main thing is the interest in the ship and the wreck and the coins that remain at bottom South China Sea is reinvigorated. Not just the 50,000 coins that were never recovered, but also all the gold and all the cargo that was never recovered. The second half of the ship hasn't been found. I don't think they ever found that part of the ship. Otherwise, they would have made efforts to recover the vault, the purser's vault. So it's worth revisiting. One thing that I have to consider is what the wreck's going to look like. So like I said, after the fire, the divers who went down there in 1875 and 1877 reported that most of the top and upper decks were completely burned away, and only the bottom deck made out of wood and the treasure tank were left intact. What was remaining of the front half of the ship anyway. So after spending 170 years at the bottom, how much of it is rotted away, rusted away, and at the same time, how much damage has been done to it by fishing trawlers that have gone over it over the past few decades, since industrial fishing has become a major part of Chinese cuisine. So I'm expecting to see a shipwreck site that's completely obliterated. Either it's completely covered in netting that's been ripped away, or the shipwreck has been scattered across the seafloor, dragged around all over the place by various uncaring fishing vessels, or the fishing vessels with sonar who think, oh, we found a large shoal, and they just drive right over it without thinking what they've picked up. So it'll be very interesting to see, and that's part of why I'm excited to see the archaeological authority going out there, because if they go down and they see that kind of damage and they find netting and they pull out coins that look like mine, then that's some partial vindication to me, and quite good news. On the other hand, if they find nothing and just a big middle finger saying you're an idiot, Ben, then that's also me put in my place. So we'll find out in September 2023 what the real answer is, I suppose.
Alrighty, we have someone in the Q&A who would like to be able to kind of follow the story and see how it develops. So where should people follow along to see any future developments on the topic?
I suppose the only place I can think of right now is southchinavoices.com. I'm contacting the author directly. Right now, he's the one who has been in touch with many of the historians and archaeologists and Chinese authorities regarding this wreck. He was there in 2015, talking about and sharing his book over there in China a little bit, doing presentations in Asia. So I guess if you wanted updates, I'm not sure if his website's going to start doing updated blogs. There was a bling. Is that me telling me to stop talking?
No, you're good.
Okay, just all the bleeps and bloops. I keep thinking it's an alarm. But I guess Robert Wells will be the place to follow. His website, southchinavoices.com. Contacting him directly. Maybe he should start a newsletter. If you're watching this, Robert, if you've got some extra work for you now, there you go. Because yeah, I'm getting updates from him. So I guess he'll have something extra to write about if he wants to share that. And eventually you may see a documentary about the ship and these coins, regardless of what I found here, because like I said, the interest has been renewed that certain parties are trying to get in on the action and find out what's exactly at the bottom of the South China Sea now. So, and they're going out and meeting descendants of the survivors and getting their stories and trying to record that before that disappears. So hopefully we can get some good information out of that. So right now, I think South China Voice is the only place to go at the moment. Ask him to start writing a blog about what's been going on. Because yeah, I appreciate there's nowhere else to get that information. That's a good point. Thank you for raising that.
All right, we have someone asking, what is the wreck behind you?
I don't know. I just found it on Google Images. The other alternative was using a screenshot of the host's living room just to freak her out, but she said that was too horrible to consider. So the fact that I might be in the vicinity of her home was enough to make her convulse. So I decided not to do that. Yeah. So I believe it's the Titanic. I'm not sure. It's just something for fun.
Someone else in the Q&A has confirmed it is indeed the Titanic.
Thank you. That's right. I'm underwater right now. I'm coming to you from the bottom of the Atlantic, talking about a ship in the Pacific.
Good deal. Okay, I think that was the last question in the Q&A, and we are close to being out of time. So I'm going to leave it for a few more minutes. Go ahead and send in any last-minute questions. Someone has pointed out that not everyone may be voting. So I'm going to lower everyone's hand, and then we will try voting if you still have questions or do not believe that it is from the SS Japan. So give me just a minute.
Vote if they don't believe, or vote if they believe?
If they don't, let me get the hands down and then I'm going to explain that better. Okay.
Okay.
So now everyone's hands are down. So if you still have doubts about whether the coins are from the SS Japan or do not believe it, now click that raise hand button and we'll see what the proportion is of people who are voting, because we may have some people who are just very on the fence. Or
let me steel myself emotionally. No, I'm kidding.
Or don't feel qualified to have an opinion. So, okay, we have extremely few hands going up. So of the people who are voting, we very much have a majority saying that they believe you.
Look, that doesn't prove anything, but it's just nice to know that I haven't been completely burning a lot of hot air. So that's the main thing. But yeah, no, I hope my presentation has at least brought light to a very obscure and very interesting wreck. and that I'm just glad that it started to the wheels in motion to find out what's exactly going on down there, because it's an important and very tragic wreck, important part of Chinese and American history, and I think it's important that if fishermen are accidentally or intentionally going down there and getting silver dollars for free, and disturbing a resting place, I think it's important that that place get preserved and the artifacts get pulled up and preserved and saved as quickly as possible. So yeah, when Robert wrote this book in 2015, I'm not sure what efforts he made to ask in regards to preserving the wreck. Obviously, it seems like nothing occurred, but the fact that these coins are now appearing on the market, remember I wasn't the first one, suggests that something needs to be done, especially once news of this gets out. Who knows what some people are going to be doing out of greed or things like that. So I hope at the very least this helps to protect what's left of this very important heritage.
And we do have someone who wanted to follow up with a question. So if anyone would like to contact Ben afterwards, you're welcome to send in anything through the contact form on the symposium website, and we'll forward those along directly to him. So it's just that contact us tab on the nnpsymposium.org, and we will forward them to get you in touch.
Okay, should we call it a day there?
Yep, I think that will wrap us up. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, good luck with your presentation today. Please send me the video when you're done, because I'm a fan as much of those coins as you are. I can't watch it at 2:30 in the morning. Sorry.
No.
No.
Not worth it. Thank you everyone for attending. We have Xavier Rojas starting at 11:30. I think his presentation is probably already open to join if you want to catch that one. And we have presentations continuing through this evening. So thank you all for joining, and thank you, Ben, so much for taking the time out at 10 p.m. to do a presentation for us. It's very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.